Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the No Matter What Club. We're so excited for our two guests that we have in the studio. First is Kathleen Murphy, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has a career spanning over 3.5 decades. Kathleen has dedicated her professional life to serving individuals grappling with substance use complications intertwined with relational trauma and attachment wounds. Her journey in the field has been characterized by compassion, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to recovery and healing. Also, we have Brian Stark, who is the executive director and family liaison of a mental health facility here in Los Angeles. He's spent nearly 2 decades being of service both in the local recovery community and working with the homeless population. He is a dear friend. I'm so excited. Please help me welcome Kathleen and Brian. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the No Matter What Club. I'm so excited to be featuring our special guests that we have here in the studio tonight. First, I'm going to obviously introduce my sidekick, Mel.
Hello.
Over there, executive director of No Matter What Recovery. And I'm so honored and privileged to have one of my dear, dear friends. Somebody that saw me when I came into the rooms, the A rooms, and has been by my side through the whole journey. We have my dear friend Brian Stark here with us.
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Brian. All right. And I am honored to have one of probably the greatest mentors in my life sitting next to me on my left. Therapist, magician extraordinaire, I will say.
Trauma whisperer.
Trauma whisperer, all the things. Miss Kathleen Murphy.
Hey, y'all.
Hi. Are you from the South?
Oh, no, I'm not
I just
from
heard a y'all.
Yeah, that's because I lived in Austin for 30 years. But I was born in New York City, so I used to talk like this right here. I code switch a lot.
She is a magician.
One line.
So we have some interesting topics to talk about. I think that, I said it before the show, but just so our viewers and listeners can hear this, when I think of the word spirituality, you two are two of the people that come to top of mind for me. And I guess we can start with the conversation with, was spirituality something that y'all learned in recovery, or was that something that was in your lives pre-recovery, or?
For me, it was pre-recovery. I grew up going to church and had like some spirituality, and went to a Baptist school when I was a kid. I did not hear all the negativity about my sexuality. Like, I just didn't have that experience. Like, I really had a pleasant experience, and it was a place where I felt I belonged because I could sing and dance and be in plays. And that was kind of like my first niche, was able to escape my home life and be a little bit more of my true authentic self at where I went to church. And as I got into recovery, of course, it has morphed and changed in so many ways. And honestly, my spirituality is the greatest gift that I have and my most important gift. And it's helped me evolve into the person that I am today. So
I love it.
So you're going to start off with the big one. Like, we're not going to go low.
Nope.
We're going to go high. You know, the way that I think about it, as long as I can remember, is that I always felt like there was something calling my name. And I didn't have a name for that, but it was like something that was getting my attention, that was stirring inside of me. And, in terms of ritual, I was raised, I'm a CIA, Catholic Irish alcoholic. And so I used to see the big girls, and they would always be in this ritual. And in the Catholic Church, there's incense.
I love the smell
And
of incense.
there's these prayers, and I had, I still have them memorized. And when I would find myself in times of trouble, I would find these prayers that they would just emerge from me, like this one. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
Blessed art thou
amongst women, and blessed is the fruit. except for I rewrote it into "Hail, Kathleen, full of grace, the Lord is with thee." And I have always had a love of ritual and scent, and candles, but I didn't know it then. And before I got sober, I ate some mushrooms, a lot of them. And I had this spiritual experience that literally changed the course of my life from this day forward. I'm wearing this shirt, it says the refreshing taste of karma.
I love it.
And what I think karma actually means, a lot of times people focus on the effect, but karma is what gets set in motion. And when I was on this psilocybin journey, I used to go to the fields and pick out the mushrooms myself. And
What year was that?
in 1975, 1976. And I was trying not to drink, but I didn't know how to stay sober. And I tried antabuse, all this other stuff. And I started eating mushrooms. And what I saw was I was living with a great amount of fear, and that everyone and everything around me was wearing these masks, and that we were profoundly dishonest, and it scared the shit out of me. And so I thought, I'm going to keep on doing this until I work through every fear that I have. And the culminating trip was I saw this white light, and I had never read about anything like this, but I saw this white light, and I saw myself as energy itself, but I was like a half a sphere, and it told me that you can stay here if you want, but you have not finished what you are sent here to do, and that your purpose is to learn to love. And I was like, okay, but I'm 17, so I come back down, and I wake up, I come more to, I guess you could say. And I was 17, and what I thought love was then was I thought it meant I had to have a boyfriend. Because that's the 17-year-old thought, like a child thought. And so I am still living in what was set in motion in that day, which was, what AA is a path for me that set in motion. How do I come to know what love is? It's not this, it's a power that's more powerful than fear, right? It's not necessarily nice. It screams no. It can play all the notes on the keyboard of life. And it's like what my addiction did was my invitation to a transformation or into a conversation with this power that exists, whether I believe it or not. It has nothing to do with belief, right? Any more that air has to do with belief. It's everywhere and nowhere.
Well, I was raised dramatically Catholic as well, and then in my addiction, I only prayed when I was in trouble. When I was in, I had handcuffs on me or something was going terribly wrong, I was like, God save me. And I would bargain. I'd be like, if you get me out of this, I'll never do sex work again. Or if you get me out of this, I'll never use again. And
do you think you prayed anyway, but you didn't recognize the prayer? That just because you didn't say, hey, God. Do you think there was some other prayer?
I do. And it's crazy that you bring that up because the reason that I was able to recite the Hail Mary is because I have always been a mama's boy, and in Catholicism, I've always had an affinity for the Virgin Mary, always. And I don't know what it is.
That's a prayer.
That's a prayer, for sure.
Right? You have this affinity to this. Even when you're talking about it, I see it in your eyes. Right? There's something moving even as you think about it. Like you're kind of in a prayer right this second.
Right.
Well, Mel, what was your experience with it, with spirituality?
Well, I didn't, I was raised pretty Christian. My father was the type of person that would come in and invite Jehovah's Witnesses and that knocked at the door and they would leave crying with Bibles in their hands. So he was very forceful, manipulative, with the Christian tradition, just kind of pushed it on everyone, went to Bible camp. So I was really averse, right, to traditional ritual or ideas of spirituality. And honestly, the greatest depths of spirituality that I've ever experienced have been my greatest moments of suffering. Because, and it's not like I'm reaching for or a Hail Mary or anything like that. Like, my connection to kind of the depths of just being a human on the planet and experiencing suffering in many different iterations actually has brought me closer to God in so many different ways. And I think back, there was one conversation that you and I had actually that I was like, oh, I need to recognize God a little bit more, because I was searching and I was looking and I wasn't recognizing a Hail Mary, right? Like that affinity that you have, which was, everything was fine, but I was all fucked up inside. And I went and I talked to Kathleen and I'm like, what is this? And I it wasn't the normal alcoholic kind of restlessness that I've experienced. It was something different. And when you said something has always been calling me, you gave that to me in that moment. And you're like, well, what is it? Where is it? And I said, it's sitting right here at the top of my stomach. And it feels like this little spear that's spinning out of control. But everything is fine in my life. And you said, what if that is life itself calling you? And ever since that moment, that was a God moment for me. Because I actually listened to something different. I didn't put a label on it. I didn't pathologize. Like, I just actually listened to this call of life moving me forward. I wanted to create a different action and different motion as a result of strife and struggle that was really this internal sense of agitation. But when I listened to it, my life transformed, because that was one of the moments that I started to choose love as a higher power as well, right? Like, and loving choices suck sometimes. Like, they really do. Like, it's letting people out, letting people in, discarding like certain aspects that just aren't loving in my life was one of the most important things that I think I've ever done. But it started with a conversation and not pathologizing maybe this agitation and listening for a spiritual calling and recognizing that that might actually be the path forward, right? And I always want to like try and shut it down and push it away and like say it's anxiety or say it's restlessness, but what if that itself actually is the nature of spirituality, just saying, hey, you need to turn left and you're going right?
Like it's a download of creative
That's right.
energy
Yeah,
instead of anxiety.
That's so many times.
It's so funny that you brought this up, because Brian and I were having a conversation earlier this week where I was just bitching my ear off, and he goes, well, where is God in this?
Yep.
I was like, I hate that question.
But maybe
you
it's in the
stopped.
bitch.
He totally paused. He totally paused. It's the only thing that could get him to stop.
I was like,
And it was just silence.
But God is everything.
But
everywhere.
what if God's in the bitch?
Yeah.
I'm going to say that next time. God is in me bitching right now.
Give ma'am up.
I don't think anything else I would have said, though, would have got you to pause.
Yeah.
But what? But
And that wasn't my point either.
This is like, why? Like, I think that sometimes when we go on the path and suddenly we're like, okay, it's a spiritual pause or the this or the that. But I started thinking to myself, if, you know how people go, well, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm life expressing itself. Who the fuck are you? Like the dog is life expressing itself like a dog. Grass is life expressing itself like grass, right? Like what if our only job is to recognize that sometimes that the play of life, you're bitching because you're involved in something. Like the only reason we're complaining about anything because we're involved. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're involved.
See, remember what I was talking about with the one-liners, and you're like, I don't know if I say things that are one-liners. It's like this stuff that you say, it's kind of like a mic drop. You know, it's like, Mike,
All I need is
I'm
one
going to call
mic.
you Mic Drop Kathleen. That's what I'm going to call you. Brian, how much time sober do you have?
I'm 21 years sober. Yes! I am so grateful for my recovery. My sobriety is definitely my number one priority. It's hands down the greatest gift I've ever been given. Mm-hmm. And it's the one gift that I've been given that I haven't taken for granted.
And it was free.
It was free. and I cherish it. It means so much to me. I'm always in somewhat of a sense of gratitude just because this has given me so much. This was what I was seeking. And I don't ever want to take for granted this gift that I have.
Yeah, no
It's
kidding.
important to me.
Yeah.
Mic drop, Kathleen. How much time do you have?
43 years.
43 years sober.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
What moisturizer do you
Like,
use?
how old are you?
I'm 39.
Oh, longer than you've been alive. You're forever. That's how long.
Bye forever. Kathleen's been sober for Paulo's forever.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you for paving the way.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Thank you.
and that's crazy to say. I mean,
Can I ask, in a career of sobriety, a lifetime of sobriety, I'm wondering if you would share about what happened at 5 years in your sobriety.
Okay. I don't know why, but lately I've had this like a well of like tears that want to come out. And even when you ask me that, I'm like, I just feel this like that. And I also felt it when you were sharing about how much you appreciate your sobriety. Well, I went to 14 rehabs. I hurt somebody when I was driving drunk. I still drank. Even after that trip, that showed me the nature of love or life itself. I went to treatment for a year at a place called Austin Family House, and it was gifted to me. I lived on the streets the first 6 months I was sober. And I stayed somewhere long enough to get ground underneath my feet. And then I stayed sober long enough at 5 years that I went to trauma treatment. Because I knew back then, it was in the 80s, we didn't really talk about trauma the way that we talk about it now. We called it abuse or, childhood abuse or whatever. And I knew that I was abused as a child. I was sexually assaulted by a stranger, and more times than I can remember, but I didn't know what it meant. And I didn't know what it meant for me and being alive. And so I went to this place in New Mexico called, and another gift, I never could have paid. This is a gift that someone came along and offered me a gift. And here's where I learned one line. You want to hear one line?
yeah.
Yes.
Until you acknowledge the conditions of your existence, you are doomed to be controlled by them. Until, this is like 30-something years ago, 8 years ago. Unless you acknowledge the conditions of your existence, which I didn't know, I didn't understand. Yeah, okay, it's sort of like, yeah, I'm a drug addict, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, so what? Drink up. What does it mean to have trauma? What does it mean? And that was the beginning of understanding that what it meant for me was I lived as if that my heart was incapable of breaking, that had no vulnerability, that is bionic, that I did not and could not acknowledge my humanity. And that set in motion another cause of healing that I'm still living in the ripple of today. And it's why I do the work that I do, actually. Because I wanted to know, why do people like me who truly wanted to be sober? I mean, I'm talking, people are, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do that. It's like, fuck that. I did all of it, and I still used. And so I wanted to know if there are other people like me, and they all had unresolved something. They didn't call it
Trauma at the time.
no. And that's why I've dedicated my life to this, because I think we don't know very much. I think we know so little.
You had a similar experience with multiple times trying to get sober.
Yeah, I did. I went to multiple rehabs, and I wanted it.
Me
I
too.
really wanted a different way of living, and I wanted it. The trauma really kept me.
how do you know? Like, can I ask you this question?
Yeah.
And like, can we?
Yeah.
I mean, like when you say that, like I love to engage at these kind of things. It's like when you said the trauma, how do you know it was that?
I think it was, because it wasn't until I really surrendered and became completely honest with myself that I got it this time. Like, I had to
Like even that.
share my deepest, darkest secrets, but also the most painful things. Like, for me, the most painful thing was growing up in a house where my mom was like a saint, my father was an addict and an alcoholic, raging, physically and emotionally abusive, suffers from the same disease I do. But just growing up, my whole life being young, like I couldn't say who I really was as a person. As a little beautiful young gay boy, I couldn't say, I like him. I want to play with these toys.
Yeah.
I like this. I couldn't express myself. It was the most traumatic event for me not to be who I am.
Yeah.
To be too scared to just share who I am. And it wasn't until I got to the place where I admitted, though this is me, I need to share with you how much this hurt me. I need to share that this happened to me. I need to tell myself and the world who I am. And it gave me a freedom.
Yeah.
God, you're killing me over here. Because I mean, it's like I think every queer person has a similar story. I mean, was that your story?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a very hostile environment. Like there was no safety. There were no LGBT centers. Like when I was like coming of age and realizing my differentness, like there was no place to turn to. And the places that I did turn to kicked me out in the street. Like, so then I just learned that, oh, it's not safe here. I'm just going to continue to conceal and foreclose on the most beautiful parts of who I think I am, actually. I foreclosed on those for years. And not really having a place to express my own identity or my own humanness, right? Or, take someone to prom or ask someone out on a date. Or those things were not available to me until much later in life. But when I think about this subject, and I think about, yes, I've had a lot. The world has thrown a lot of slings and arrows, as you would call them, my way, right? And it hasn't
Shakespeare
been
would
the
call
most
that.
peaceful path. But when I came into sobriety, like, I had to acknowledge the things that I had done. And
Okay.
those were some of the most injurious things that happened to me were by me. Like, and those were the ones that I carried. Those, like, I think I'm incredibly resilient, and I faced such adversity in my life and had a lot come towards me. I know how to handle that, but I don't know how to handle compromising my own sense of spirituality. My own compass of morality was completely withered away and dried up like a flower on a vine that once existed when I came in. Like,
Come on. All I needed one.
but it really, like, there's an Emily Dickinson poem that comes to mind, and it talks about this withering flower on a vine. And I was so dry and just burnt out, but not because other people hadn't watered me. It's because I did not do that, right? I didn't, yeah.
Well,
I
you
didn't-
mean like you didn't know the conditions that you needed in which to flourish. That's like if you're a cactus and you're living with a whole bunch of
Jungle.
overwater people.
No one in this room.
And they're calling it love, and you're like,
Drowning.
And then you feel bad because they're saying, but I love you, while they're watering you to death. And you're like, it's hard to know what the conditions are that a human being needs to flourish. I also, I'm like, here's a question I have for me, like when I hear your story and I hear what you're saying and I see your tears as you respond. And I go, okay, so here I am I'm a cisgendered, heterosexual person that feels the same. Like, I'm white, but like the stories that I love, like The Color Purple, like my favorite all time is The Color Purple, like
So good.
the Broadway play.
I'm here.
Cynthia
Erivo.
I'm gonna take a deep breath.
Oh, I love it.
Like
Goosebumps.
all these stories, because I think it is actually a human unfolding, because every wisdom tradition is about claiming your right to be in some way. Like, even if the stories have been twisted in some way, it's like, are you going to take up this life that you have? And then I think, why do I care so much? I show up to, today, like, because when I hear the sound of your pain, I hear the sound of my pain. It just sounds different externally. Like, I felt embarrassed that anybody would even think that I would care about them. Like when I hear the stories of so many men that I've worked with, that when they're 13 years old, their natural desire to want to explore sexually, having to go, like some old man, predatoring on that.
Which is common in the gay community.
Very common. And before I understood that, I would just mention it right away. Because in some ways, when you think it's you that is making that decision, it's unless I have something to give you while I'm saying, is this an assault? But let me just go. The way that my shame was is that if anyone even thought that I liked them, I would protect them from being embarrassed, because there was something embarrassing or not okay about the way that I loved or the body that I'm living in, that it was somehow not allowed. But it wasn't because I was gay, and it wasn't because I was not the right color, or my father, we were poor. But I don't know where that came from. And I could say, well, some people rise up in the same conditions as me and they don't have that. And so I'm not a person that thinks that trauma is caused by events. That's why I call them potentially traumatizing events. It depends on other things.
Sorry, just so for clarification, we say you say potentially traumatizing events.
Yeah, because I don't
rather than
think that events cause trauma. I think that trauma is more about what is not happening.
Is a reaction.
Like here's my arm. Like you can tell that my arm works, right? You see it works. How do you know it works?
Because I see it moving.
But if you saw it moving, but you didn't know what an arm was, you wouldn't know whether it worked or not. Like, I think that's important. I think a lot of times when we're talking about trauma, we start so late in the conversation. Like, you know what an arm is for. And so if I'm holding my arm like this, you can see
That it's not working.
dysfunctioning means not working for what? A purpose. And so my purpose of an arm is to keep things out here to bring things towards me. And if my arm is not able to do that, then it's dysfunctional. So my arm has been broken 3 times. If it's an event, why does my arm work just fine today? Why do you think my arm works? If trauma is about events, how come my arm works today?
I've always learned it's trauma. And
But wait.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is me.
Yeah,
This is how I do
I
it.
love it.
It's like, why does my arm work today? What are the conditions that would be necessary?
You fixed it.
Me?
Well,
The first time I broke my arm, I was 7.
You got it in a cast.
But how did I get it in a cast?
Your parents drove you to get it.
Before that, I know, I'm really
Okay,
doubling
wait.
down.
Okay, hold on.
I want you to think about all the assumptions that we're making
Right.
before we got to your parents brought you. Like, let's say I fell off a bed. What do you think the first thing that happened was?
You said ouch.
Yes. I screamed. And when I screamed, someone actually heard it.
Right.
And they didn't come and go, hey, big boys don't cry, little girls don't cry, get your shit together, it'll go away. My father didn't go, I'm only a welder. We don't have enough money to take you to the hospital. He didn't give a fuck. We went to the hospital. He didn't have to figure out how, like we do in treatment. We don't know
Yeah.
it's a real thing. We don't have enough money. Nobody would ever say that physically.
Right.
So I
They
got
just
the
take action.
conditions in which to heal. And therefore my arm isn't traumatized. So to me, trauma is not the event. It's what happened after the event. Did someone hear you? Did they say, oh my God, you're hurt. Let's get you the right help, not 20 years later, but today.
Right.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because
Right?
that's really the traumatic component. Not that those things happened to me, but the places that I did want to express myself as that little gay boy, like my music teacher in school. Like I wanted to do like a girl song for the talent show. The people where at church or at school and teachers, I went to them to be like, well, they'll listen to me. They'll hear what I have to say. They'll be supportive. And they weren't supportive.
And when they weren't, then what happened?
I was hurt
Where?
in my heart.
Right here?
Yeah. On the inside.
Right here? Tell me your birthday.
December 29th.
What do I say? That's your address?
What's up?
Your address, 729 Bryan?
Yeah.
729 Bryan Lane. That's your address.
Yeah.
That's right. Like, it's like, what's your birthday?
11/17.
1117 Paulo Avenue. That's your address when you, right? But we are taken away from our address because we get hurt, but no Red Cross comes.
Yeah.
We're told to be quiet, sit down, shut up. So to me, when I'm reclaiming that, it's first I have to, it's not about remembering the past. It's about the past is right here.
Yeah.
It's right
Heartbreak.
here. It's in the heart right now. It's when somebody says some shit and it's like shots are fired and it goes right in when you weren't ready. And it's right here, right now. We don't know how to talk to anyone about it or how to be with it. Demand that it go away instead of saying, I'm sorry, I love you. I'm glad that you're here.
I didn't say I'm sorry, I love you to myself for years, right? I didn't know that self love was something that was appropriate because I grew up in a household where you said it earlier, where it's like, man up, boys don't cry, and I want to say two things. We were talking about trauma, and for me, in school I learned that trauma was a reaction, and how I received something, and then how I reacted, I find it really interesting with what you said, though. It's a perceived trauma.
Yeah, and I just want to argue with that. Like I'm on a long 40-year conversation about what the nature of trauma is, and it's like because again. Do you see how that's individualized? Oh, it's about how you reacted, right? It's not about, oh, where was the institution that when your heart was hurt that helped you identify, oh, hey, Brian, that's a hurt heart. Did you know your heart was like music? Or the question is, why? How come? And then you're told, given some advice that you can't even fucking use at all. And I feel on a rampage about that, like, so that our nervous systems don't grow right because we don't have the conditions in which to flourish, right? And so what is your nervous system for? What is the brain for? It's to give you accurate information about your environment so you can go towards the safety and away from danger. How many people do you work with that
So
go
many.
toward the danger and away
Yep.
from the safety?
Yep.
That's all I need to know.
Every day.
Straight into chaos, straight into danger.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
All the
trauma.
time.
It's not the event. That's it. And so it's like if my arm and I'm breaking it over and over and over, wondering why the fuck I can't get any better, and then I'm using it again, and then I'm blaming myself again. Instead of going, oh, that hurts right now. Not then, now. Oh, I don't read the room right. I look at your eyes, I see danger where there isn't any, I see safety where there isn't any. My wires are crossed.
program we call that, you got a bad picker, but it's
Yes.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then
It's
it's your
like-
individual problem.
Right.
Rather than a social justice problem,
Right. Systemic issue.
a systemic issue, and then you come to treatment, you're going to figure out all your fucking problems, and you're going to go fit back into a society that told you had no right to exist? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I know, Brian, your career has mostly been in mental health. And I know that you specialize in trauma, mental health, and substance use disorder. But we all work with families. I know that we're all aware that addiction is a family disease, mental health is a family disease. And I wanted to talk a little bit just about, through our process of healing and figuring out our trauma, or figuring out, how we were affected by catastrophic events that caused us pain. How do we navigate going back into a broken family system once we're a little healed?
I love working with the families. It's so important, and it's amazing. For one, I get a lot of information working with the families, but also too, like, the families need help.
Yeah.
They need support. Like, without family support, it's like nailing Jello to a tree. It does not work. It doesn't work. The family support, like, giving them support, hearing them, listening to them, empathizing with them, aligning and partnering with them, so they give me more of a history, and more of a history, especially in mental health, of other people that had mental health issues in further generations, or other people in the family, brings a lot into the mix of things. But it's also about the families. Until I listen and empathize with them, and align and partner with them, and build relationship and rapport with them, they don't even feel safe enough to tell me the truth. But once that's set, we can all work as a team to help the client, or the resident, or the patient.
Designated loved one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes the family's sicker than the person.
Okay.
Like, sometimes they're sicker than the person. They
Well,
need
of
just
course
as much
they
help.
are.
Which
Like-
is what causes.
Well, I don't call the patient I could say you're the identified possibility in the family.
Yeah.
That the problem is that you think that your loved one is a problem,
Yeah.
Very valid point. And it's true.
right? And so I'm like, if you're watching your loved one die all the time, but you think they need the help when they have an army of people helping them every day at the treatment center, and you can't even go to an hour of treatment, like a free class, you can't go to an Al-Anon meeting because you're so thinking that the problem is this other person. For me, it's if I do not know how to define the problem, I cannot even come close to a solution. Right? Like,
Absolutely.
when
And-
they're saying, oh, the problem is this, it's a system. And now it's just a family system. I don't even call it family anymore. I call it cultural of origin.
Oh, cool.
Because,
Yeah.
like my mom was born, I was born out of wedlock, right?
In
In a Catholic, Irish
alcoholic.
family.
Household.
But also in a time when
1957.
having children out of
Not
wedlock
allowed.
wasn't accessible or acceptable.
So what do I become? My mother's shame.
Oh.
And so my whole life I'm going, oh, my mother, blah, 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 blah. But did I stop to consider that my mother was told I was her shame? And so she didn't have, once a person said, did she tell you that? And I said, no. Do you need somebody to tell you when they're looking at you as defective?
Yeah.
You get the vibe. Because
Yeah.
what happens is people lie. No, I didn't say that. I did not say that. And it's just like, so I did not understand the conditions of her existence, and I was doomed to be controlled by it too, right?
Yeah.
That we all,
I mean, yeah, I'm removed from families. Like, I had people that showed up for me, but they were not my family.
Chosen family.
Like,
family.
it and just the most oddball people too, like Danny. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Hi, Danny.
Hi, Danny. Yeah,
Hi, Danny. You feel like my family.
Well, yeah, and I have had beautiful people come into my life as a result of kind of seeking out that and looking for that to build a family system that works for me, because mine does not. Like, I have such a love for my grandmother, but like, other than that, it just doesn't work for me. So I have an aversion, actually, to like the traditional idea of, biological family, because that's not at all my experience in sobriety. Like, those were not the people that showed up for me, on a family weekend. It was like my friends who showed up for me in the courtroom, who took me to detox. It was my friends. And it was not a mom. It was not a dad. It was
Is
those
that a
people.
customary idea of family?
No.
You
no.
know that
It was a chosen family, like and I deal a lot with that too, like partners, people that have just been through so much and they have their own PTSD from their best friend. I mean, I've seen a lot of that. And I loved, and that's the same as a relative family as well for me. And I love
family.
Yeah, chosen family.
In my work with family systems, it has brought me the awareness of how I treated my family in my disease and my addiction. And whenever I'm talking to moms, particularly, I already said that I'm a mama's boy.
Yeah.
I for whatever reason, I feel like I found something in this industry that brings me purpose. And it is something that I never, when I first got sober, even, when I started working in my career, did I ever see myself working with families of drug addicts, alcoholics, and people suffering with mental health? And for whatever reason, it brings me so much joy because I'm able to heal myself through their journeys.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Totally.
And
You're honest about it.
I get some closure.
Totally. Like deeper understanding.
Deeper understanding. I had no idea my mom was a workaholic.
And that's such a grace to give to her.
And that, I love my mom. Brian's met my mom several times. Before she passed away, Brian threw my sober parties for me, and my parents flew in, and my parents were there. My
so
parents
much
have
fun.
always been there to support my recovery. But as a child, I grew up in a home where, and I've come to this conclusion through doing the work in this program and working with other families, and we hear it a lot in the rooms, but I had to come to a place of acceptance and saying my parents did the best they could with what they had. And for me, that is enough. Because I resented my parents, and I put that resentment in my arms for years.
I love that saying, and I have a colleague, not in this state, in another state, and when they hear our parents did the best they could with what they got, this person bristles at hearing that, right? And it was kind of a shock to me because, in our circles, we say this. And I spent a long time trying to understand, because he would say it was not their best. They could have done better. And I've been thinking about that now for 3 or 4 years. I don't know how we would ever know if a person could have done better. Do you?
For me,
Like, I'm with you.
yeah, for me and my clarity, and just to be able to look at a childhood that, looking back, I if I had to look back at my childhood, I would call it beautifully tragic.
That's a one-liner.
And so looking back at my childhood, in order for me to find the beauty in some of the most, to know that you're gay at an age of 7 or 8 in pre-formative years and not be able to talk about it, and be in a family system where I knew it wasn't okay, and come home to not a lot of abuse, but an abusive family system, and then go to school and be bullied. I didn't take my first safe breath until I walked into a gay bar and heard Deborah Cox, "Nobody's supposed to be here."
Okay.
And that was the first safe breath I ever took in my entire life.
That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
And I was 16 years old.
You know?
Right.
And then I went from that.
Nobody's supposed to be here. Can you tell me more?
It's just a
It's a
song.
It's a song.
It was the gay anthem.
anthem.
I know, but do you mind if I hear just a couple of lines?
Nobody's supposed to be here.
How did
you get here?
No,
Nobody's supposed to be here.
It's a powerful.
It is. It's
I love hearing it right now. That you didn't take a safe. You know, the reason I'm asking you is
Yeah.
because you said something that you're already seeing I'm an interrupter. I'm like, you said it wasn't a lot of abuse. How much is too much? How much it would be?
Well, you know, I say that in a way to make it feel a little bit better for me because I've seen. I grew up in chaos. I grew up in an environment where I didn't get the shit beat out of me every day, but I was disciplined enough, and that my parents believed in corporal punishment. And so I remember, or they would lock me in a room after they beat me with a belt, you know, and like at the time in the 90s, was that acceptable? I don't know. In my household it was, but like I've now dealt with people that had far more worse abuse, so I minimize mine.
Can I tell you something? That I have been beaten more times than I can remember. I have been sexually assaulted more times than I can remember, but I'm going to share you the worst abuse. You know what's easier about that? People will go, oh my God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
But when I tell them the real abuse, when my mother would give me the silent treatment, there's no Red Cross for that. There's no therapist going, oh my God, did you hear how terrible that was?
Yeah.
Like, I want to use my voice for people who say they don't have the story, because I do have the story, and I'm saying that the things that are subtle, they're worse.
Yeah, that's
For
my
me.
experience too.
That I once got on my hands and knees and begged my mother when I was in my 20s to please talk to me. Because it was like, it felt like a desperation. I would rather somebody just punch me. And even, like I'm thinking right now when you're saying that my little dog is over there, if I hit him one time, which it would scare him to death.
Yeah.
I have a 15-year-old granddaughter. I don't care what's customary. If I yelled at her one time, it would change her nervous
change her.
system. And I just want to say that we give so much credence to the stories that are dramatic. And it's where nobody hears you. To
Yeah.
me, that's when I go, what didn't happen? It's like, yeah, I broke my arm. What didn't happen? My arm wouldn't work today if my dad would have came and did nothing. Just like today.
Yeah.
Today, all the things that are going on, the trauma and the culture, let's say, it's about all the ways we're going to turn away from kids that are trying to say, I'm here. Maybe nobody's even going to hit them. Maybe they are. Maybe it's easier if somebody, like, then they could say, see, I heard.
Yeah, it's so much easier if there's like a, bleeding wound versus
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
and no one,
That's, yes.
like you have said that like, no one knows when you carry a broken heart. Like, and that is something I walked around with. And it wasn't, like, I have a story, right? Sure.
Yep, you have a
I
story.
got a bruised and bloodied story. But it was being alone.
That's
It was being betrayed. It was knowing something that is happening and doing
Nothing.
Which is why, like, that is one of, I think, the worst things. And Dr. King talks about it. Elie Wiesel talks about it. Like, it's those who did nothing and who do nothing and stand by and watch is one of the worst.
That's, so you know that saying, hurt people hurt people?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, of course.
But we become the hurt people hurting people. Like when we stand by and we do nothing because we get frozen. And it's like, this is the reason. Why do we have to work with our trauma? It's because we are more likely to become hurt people than hurt people. And mostly, maybe not, like punching someone, but by this, being complicit, being silent, not, I have no idea how old you are. How old are you?
Very young.
Very young.
I am very young.
Were you around in the 80s for the AIDS?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, here's what I learned from then. I know you're not telling me.
No,
that.
it's actually the generation before me. I wasn't losing people.
I just remember this silence equals death. It was the silence of the people who stood by and did nothing. That's why I'm in such a rampage to go, it's not about remembering events. It's about what's happening now. In our hearts now. It's the thing when somebody says something to you and we can't say ouch. Because we get so terrified we become immobilized. It's happening now.
I love all of these topics. It's happening now.
It's happening now.
We've said some really amazing one-liners in this episode, and I am sad to say that
It's time?
it's time.
We just got started.
I know.
However,
We're just getting warmed up.
Yes,
we do have
A part 2 and 3
quick-
coming up.
we do have a quick one question we ask on every episode of our guests is, what is your no matter what?
Oh. What do you mean no matter what?
So,
Like what's,
what?
what's
I
your,
get it?
yeah, what's your no matter what?
No matter what?
My no matter what is for me to forget to not turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, because it's changed my life so much. And my no matter what is to not be silent.
Use your voice.
And use my voice and use my experience and do everything I can while I'm on this earth to make sure I'm being heard and seen and other people are being heard and seen and loved and valued. That's my no matter what.
Damn.
What's your no matter what?
Me?
Drop the mic, Kathleen. What's your...
Okay. Let me think for a second because I was really hearing that. This is new. This is a new no matter what
all right.
for me. Okay. So I have a friend, and I was telling her that I have a hard time with people who are on the other side of the fence from me regarding the current happenings in the world. And she said,
The political climate, you mean?
"Yup."
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the most overwhelmed that I've ever felt about what is happening. And so I was telling a friend of mine that in Nashville, and she's a black woman, and she said, I said, how can you be friends with that person if they're voting against who you are? And she said, because I don't have the privilege to choose right now. And I said, damn. And then I came back and I thought about what she said for a couple weeks, because I ponder shit for weeks or years. Here's my no matter what. I will use my privilege wherever I have it, no matter what, to elevate people who may not have access to what I might have access to. I don't care what the expense is to me, no matter what.
I love it. God, that's powerful.
I will not cower.
Yeah.
I want to know what I'm made of. And it's easy to say, I won't do this, I won't do that, I'll speak up. When it's easy, oh yeah, am I willing to not shop at Amazon? Or am I committed to a life of convenience? Will I take a stand where and how I can? If someone is misusing a person, rather than being afraid and shutting down, will I stand up and say, that's not okay? I want to be that person. I don't know if I am, but I want to be.
This is what I love about sobriety, is that we get to see things in other people. We get to see things out of conversations. We get to see things out of conversations like this. And we'll be able to walk away tonight and think about how it will impact us and how we can change our behavior. And become self-aware.
And use a platform.
Use our platform.
And learn. I learned so much
And
being here
learn.
tonight.
Yeah.
I know.
I learned so much being here tonight, and I'm grateful for this experience.
Me too.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry. This guy, I heard this guy tell another guy this. He relapsed for 20 years. And his sponsor was this guy named Don P., a Native American. And he went up and he said, and he was beating himself up, like we do. And he said, when you took that third step, did you mean it? And he said, I did. And he goes, how do you know this isn't part of it?
Oh.
Wow.
I'm like, mic drop.
Coming in with a curveball, okay.
The things that make you go,
Things that make you go,
I love that.
Thank
Yeah.
you both and all three of you for being here.
Always.
It was a
Thank you.
beautiful
Always a pleasure.
conversation.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to see you back on the next episode of the No Matter What Club.
No matter what.